are some things that we as a group just don't discuss, and one of them is the coal trains. Not that we can't tell you about it, or that it's a secret, we just don't fully understand it. We had made it now to Hewlett, Wyoming, and it was here that I caught some footage of a lifetime. Now we all know that Lyman Johnston could taxi his plane wing inflated from South Dakota to Oklahoma, and the only reason he hasn't is because he doesn't want to. Now, Lyman is one of the best, everyone agrees with that, but I caught him practicing while everyone was at lunch one day. He hasn't quite perfected the up and down part, but he can land backwards just perfectly. Now this is one of our group's top secrets, and Lyman is not revealing how it's exactly done. Well, I guess for one reason, he's the only one that can do it. For the newer pilots in the audience, please do not try to ever attempt this maneuver. Flying here in Hewlett turned out to be really nice, as you can tell. The terrain was fairly friendly, and the topography lended itself to some interesting things to see. A mix of small, rugged canyons to tree-covered hills. Devil's Tower was an ever-present monolithic giant of rock in the background. As most monuments, there are airspace restrictions when you get close. The same was true in Custer State Park. We had to fly at about 700 feet above the ground inside the park boundaries. The folks at the airport were very accommodating. During one of Vi's pre-flights, he discovered that one of his mags was malfunctioning. They escorted us to a hangar that had a few snowmobiles inside and told us if we could find one with the same engine, we could go ahead and take the mag out of it. The airport even gave us a loaner car. We took a trip to Devil's Tower and hiked around the big spire. The loaner car was an old cop car, and Vi enjoyed playing with the spotlight quite a bit. Susie ended up having to arrest him for it. I think he enjoyed the frisking part. Anyway, we had a couple of nice evenings, big dinners of course, relaxed and caught up with all our friends a little bit more. After a few days, we were off again to our next stop, which ended up being a place called Glendive, Montana. Cindy and I took the long way and visited Custer's last stand at Little Bighorn, then caught up with the caravan the following day. Things were about to get really interesting. Denny probably won't remember this takeoff any more than the last 1,000 that he's done, and that's quite literally the truth. But I assure you he will never forget the next landing. A group of us were flying up the Yellowstone River when we heard over the radio that a pilot had gone down. Soon after, we learned it was Denny. Mike had seen the incident from a distance and was hightailing it back to the runway. We headed in too, and Vi dispatched the 912s to see if they can find him from the air while he went by ground. Henry was already out searching on his quad. Soon after we landed, Denny came walking into the RV park where we were staying. The owner had allowed us to use his field to take off on. That night, he told his story, and here it is in his own words. However, this is not the end of the whole story. He was one morning away from getting the ribbing of a lifetime. Some 20 pilots were about to have a heyday.
Enjoying the evening, snapped a couple of pictures of Mike over the Badlands, and all of a sudden, it started going down. So just looked around, had the college there, a bunch of power lines over there, and I had a pasture over here, so I headed to the pasture. And then I thought, might just run after I descended a little bit. Kicked it down again, it ran for about 8 seconds maybe, got me just a little farther. So brought it down, downwind landing, and just pegged it in there, bounced once, and my only reaction was really anger because everybody else was enjoying such a nice night, and I was on the ground looking up. And the parachute, downwind landing, the parachute's all out there in that tall grass and all this prickly stuff that Vi got, he stepped in when he came out to help me.
It was almost dark when Denny returned, so he left his plane out in the sticker patch, and the next morning a small group took the quads out to recover the plane. Once they had returned to the RV park, the Caravan pilots descended on Denny to inspect the suspect engine. And that's when we learned there was no two-stroke oil in the reservoir. Needless to say, this is when the teasing began, and it never ended. We would all like to think that this could never happen to us, but for me it was a wake-up call, a lesson. I need to be thorough in my pre-flight and in preparation for flight. This story had a good ending. No one was hurt, and we all had someone to pick on for entertainment. Denny has a reputation for his good humor, and of course he laughed with us. If nothing else, I can say one thing for sure. Denny is a good sport.